long lunch just to have a bit of reflection on what we've heard over the last couple of days and share some thoughts and things. So thank you for that, Kororo. I really appreciate everybody taking the time to just help us digest the information we've heard. Well, and lunch. There was digesting of lunch as well. So we will reconvene the meeting. It's 2:07. All right. Where to now? Who's leading me through this next bit?
Infrastructure strategy.
Infrastructure strategy. All right, let me get back on track. Where am I? Somebody help me? 189. Page 189.
Kia ora, councillors. So our infrastructure strategy, and I'm joined by Dave Wade and Lisa Drysdale, who have put in an immense amount of effort over the particularly last couple of months to bring what you see before you today from page 189 onwards. And we have a summary memo provided, as well as the actual infrastructure strategy itself. So the last time we discussed the infrastructure strategy, it was, I think, Dave, there's a couple of slides that we've prepared in the pack as well. We workshopped this as a council, and I think there was a very clear, clear acknowledgement that our infrastructure in the flood protection space does face a number of challenges. What I guess was probably less clear is how is council going to do something different effectively, because I think that's what we've definitely agreed is that the challenges are so immense that we do have to take a different approach to how we manage our infrastructure. So what you see before today is that approach, and you'll see that it is very clearly signalling that we do need to move into a different space in terms of how we manage our infrastructure long term. It also talks about how we make that transition as a council into that new space. A couple of features before I hand over to Dave and Lisa to take you through a couple of details. It is very much about integration. It is very much about an organisational response to our infrastructural challenges. And when I reflect on a few of the business cases that you've heard over the last couple of days, many of them feed into assisting us on this journey to improve the way that we manage our infrastructure. Our funding review, sustainable peatlands, a strategic spatial focus, understanding our natural hazards, and whangamarina waikiri options are a few of those business cases that are part of this. So very much about a full organisation response. And I guess the word I've heard over the last few days as well has been around integration and making sure that all of our programs are working together for those common strategic goals. The important part of the strategy is it is council signalling a direction, but a critical component is to bring our community along on that direction as well. Certainly some of the discussions that we have had with certain parts of the community, particular schemes that have an interest, are certainly showing an appetite to have these discussions. And so what the strategy does is really signal to those groups and also the wider community that we are going to have these discussions as we move forward over the years in terms of how we provide for ultimately a more sustainable community, which is what it's all about. So with that, I'll pass over to Dave and Lisa to highlight a few key points and look forward to the discussion. Do you have those slides, Dave?
8.5. You got the first slide, Dave?
Not showing up, Dave.
Madam Chair, could I ask, what are we being asked to decide in this discussion?
What are we being asked to decide?
So the request today is to ask council to adopt the infrastructure strategy for inclusion in the long-term plan for consultation.
Oh, they've
come on,
waited
we're all
so
ready.
patiently. I'd like them to be given the opportunity to speak to it. But I love the enthusiasm. That's fantastic. Yes. I would like to allow the staff the opportunity to present the highlights, the areas where you think this is going to make the fundamental difference for the Waikato region.
We'll be really quick.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the vote of support as well, by the way. Yeah, I'll just recap briefly on the purpose. So we talked about significant issues the last time we met. And, we've rephrased that some of those issues to make it really clear, both for council and for the communities to understand what are the key drivers for the change. And in doing so, we've identified what those risks and the implications are in the document. So if you've read that, then that's kind of what we've aimed to achieve there. We've also then prepared a summary of expenditure based on the capital programme that we foresee over the course of this LTP. Bear in mind, we'll talk about this later, the capital programme will change. And we'll talk about why that will be the case. And of course, we're aiming to meet requirements of legislation 101B. Next slide, Dave, please. And so in preparing this infrastructure strategy, we've had to consider which infrastructure is included, which is excluded. It's probably easier for me and quicker for me to talk about the ones that are not included at this stage. However, they may be opportunities for us to look at in the future. And so as we progress with our infrastructure thinking, there's an opportunity to bring across common thinking across all of our infrastructure management. I'll move to the next slide, please. Just to recap briefly on the challenges, we talked at some length last time. Obviously, we've got drivers like legislation, which we know about, and the morphology, what's happening, out on the land, the ability for communities and council to fund these activities. And Greg's talked to some of the other programs that will dovetail in and support, in particular, the funding policy revision that we're proposing. Climate change, land use and business capabilities are all considered in this particular strategy. It's easier now for me to say, Lisa, perhaps you jump into our thinking and how that's evolved over the last few months.
And I have to say, the staff have been really excited since the meeting that you guys had with Dave in September to actually start to go, what can we do differently and how do we weave the different pieces of work that science and integrated catchment management and finance and comms do so that we could actually change the direction of what we're doing. Yeah. And I guess that is where the next slide, please, was really the how do we weave this together so that it becomes a program across council on doing this. And it's been brilliant, the conversations with the regional resilience work, with what was happening with some of the different business cases to go, how can we do this? How can we do something different to drive what we're doing differently going forward? So that focus on how can we layer those different risks so that we can go, even though everything might be okay in this area now, we have to start thinking about what we're doing differently in the future for those areas. And then the other one going, how do we look at these areas where we know we have performance issues and start having conversations around levels of service, community resilience, doing that with the district councils, doing that with the local communities. Yes, so again, as we power through this, next slide, please. And I guess this was a key, the pie chart's just showing this is a journey. It's not saying we're going to change everything on the 1st of July, but we move from doing the same thing that we've been doing since 1989 when we first got created as a council, and we start changing our direction, and how we're doing this so that we can start to implement green solutions rather than always having to build concrete infrastructure every time to deal with the flood risks that our region faces. So again, it's for us, it was that being able to acknowledge the work that, again, we can do in this space and we want to do in this space, and we've been able to use some of the shovel-ready money over the last few years to show that it can be done. And now it's how do we make this part of our base principles of what we do as a council. Okay, we can move on to the next slide as we...
Do we want to talk to those 4 pathways? No, you're okay?
No, we'll just move on as we save them time. And I guess, again, this was also, as we were writing this and we had the various groups involved, that recognition that we can't do this by ourselves. This is going to be a collaborative response with our iwi partners, with the other councils on what we do, and especially with the landowners, because this is their livelihoods that we're talking about out there. So it's critical that we all do this as much as we can together, rather than us just trying to implement something that's been going on for a long time. And yeah, one of the exciting things has been the discussions with the universities and various groups around what research projects could we do in collaboration going into the future to work on this. And if we go 3 years ago, people weren't necessarily interested, and as much as I hate to say it, the flooding in Auckland and the Hawke's Bay and even on the Coromandel in our own areas and across the Hauraki Plains has really helped people go, yes, this is real, and yes, we should be doing something. So I always look for the silver lining, and for me that is great that it's helped people understand what risk our communities really face out there. So next slide, please. So for us, for again, with your endorsement of this change in the focus of the infrastructure strategy, we look at next 3 years, the key pieces of work that we'll be doing is, again, that review of funding is critical, because we need to ask ourselves, if we're going to go for non-infrastructure, different types of solutions, should it really be paid for by the targeted ratepayers, or is this a region-wide, improvement? So should this be funded differently? For us, that's a critical question, to have openly with everyone. And then the next one is, where should the levels of service be sustained as they are, and where should they change? Because we already know that we've got 13 drainage areas where they have now been urbanised. Should we hand those areas over to the local district councils and city council, right? Why are we still managing something that's now an urban asset? And then that last one around methodologies of how we have this conversation with the community is critical, because as I said, this is their livelihoods that we're affecting. So it's critical that we come up with a way to do this, and we know we can do this because we did it 20 years ago around Lake Taupo and the conversations there. It's just, how do we do this on a wider basis across the region?
Okay.
Yep.
I guess in terms of answering the question, what's it going to cost and what's the investment program? I'll just briefly talk to probably the next 2 slides, if you just move on, Dave. So just on the left there, sorry, just come back one. How we originally build the budget and how we build the capital investment program is largely based on what's down the left-hand side. So we review project costs, what we expect to have to pay for our infrastructure over the next wee while, and then what is the condition of the assets and the asset base that we have. As Lisa said, we have a large asset base. It's about $1.1 billion worth of assets. The issue for us now is to say, well, is that the asset base we're going to continue to maintain? And the recommendation in this infrastructure strategy is that will probably be less. And in terms of making the decision in which infrastructure we retire or replace, We need to change our thinking around what are the options. It's not just a like-for-like replacement anymore. It will be priority focused on nature-based solutions. Obviously, communities are starting to gather pace in terms of their plans and expectations, and we're already having to start to think about how we respond to that. And there may be conversations with communities that require us to think about solutions upstream as opposed to simply solutions locally. So hence the funding policy change. And as we've built the budget, I think, you know, we have the mind to say it's likely that what we spend that money on will change over time. And so we treat the budget as an envelope of operating cost. We'd expect that the CapEx portion would reduce and would probably increase the OpEx spend as a result. So there's a lot of unknowns, and we expect to spend the next 3 years trying to work through exactly how this is going to lay out. We already know 15% of our assets are end of life, and that's an increase from 13%. So we know there's a challenge we're facing, and it's getting worse. And so there's an opportunity there for us to look at risk and decide properly which assets we will replace, which we'll continue to maintain, and which we'll retire. So I'll let Lisa just talk through the capital plan because she built it.
Yes, can
Just
we?
on the next slide. In fact, we'll skip the next one and move on to the capital plan.
So 3 years ago, when we did the last LTP, the capital budget for the 50 years was just under 1 billion. This time, 3 years later, it's just over 1 billion. Again, it's a 50-year view. And again, that comes down to we have a fairly definitive program for the 3 to 6 year window. And then we know approximately the works we need to do in that 10 to 12 year window. And then past that, you are into forecasting based on what is happening around asset condition and land performance, land subsidence. So where we believe we're going to have to do major replacements of assets and drainage networks and things like that. So again, overall, the picture hasn't changed substantially over what it looked like 3 years ago in that space. And if we go to the next slide, the capital breakdown of what that spend looks like. Yeah, you can again, the top slide is just showing that proportion of what that spend looks like for each 5 year period in terms of the type of work that's occurring. So again, we're still seeing the majority of the work is around stop banks, but 3 years ago, or even 10 years ago, the amount of work on stop banks was at about 60% of the capital budget, because a lot of the upgrade work has occurred to protect the communities. That number has started to drop. And at the end of this build season, where hopefully we'll have finished the major banks at the top of the hierarchy again, that is starting to signal the end of our major construction process we've had for the last 10 to 12 years, reconstructing stop banks across the region. Yeah, which means that some of those other costs that you start to see around the amount needing to be spent on pump stations and floodgates, yeah, the ratio is starting to change as those assets are coming up for renewals. Again, this does not include changing some of these solutions to green solutions. This does not include putting Archimedes screw pumps in everywhere. This is the base program to deliver as we've been delivering for the last 50 years. The work over the next 3 years mean that in 3 years' time, I expect I'll be bringing a different type of budget to you to go, this is what this could look like if we're as we start to change that, you know, turn the dial and change what we're doing. And I believe that's about the end.
Pretty much it.
Yes. Last slide is recommendation, please endorse. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
now you can get in there, Councillor Smith.
Look, absolutely support, but I know you were oversimplifying it. 13 drainage districts that are now urbanised. Just looking at one locally, the urbanisation is in the headwaters of the Te Kawai catchment. The farmers downstream would not like to go back to the district because I'm the representative for that area and know very well. So it's just not a 13 straight back, but I understand it is a problem and we need to address it.
And that's why we're saying community engagement is core.
And so absolutely, if it needs a movement, I'll move it that we adopt it.
Do I have a second? Councillor Hughes. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Budget we're supposed to approve. We're approving a strategy.
strategy.
This is a strategy.
So we can engineer this to do this.
In the business cases, in the business cases.
So through you, Madam Chair, our infrastructure budget is part of our wider budget, I suppose. This particular item is more about the strategy going forward around our infrastructure.
All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, Lisa. I
Good.
appreciate all the work that went into that.
That was easy, Madam Chair.
All right. So next we have, what item are we on?
Why don't you do something simple like
Are we doing the,
Public transport.
are we doing PT, are we doing the finance? Public transport.
public transport?
So, so there's a series of, sorry, councillors, this is a series of matters. This is item 9, item 10, and item 11, all in relation to public transport. So we're starting with item 9. This is on page 228. 228 in your agenda. Phil, Sarah, and Vincent.
Yes, thanks, councillors. I'll hear you play. So we've got 3 topics to discuss with you today, and Sarah and Vince will be presenting them. The first is the public transport special events funding.
I'm assuming that taking the paper is read, so I'm happy to go to questions if that's okay.
So this is in relation to the special events funding. Oh, sorry. Who do we have first?
No,
Sorry.
Councillor Strange.
Thank you. Yeah, so just a quick question. So the policy as it currently stands needs some tweaking.
Yes.
When would be the earliest that we could tweak that?
Oh, so the plan based on that paper is that we would tweak that prior to this LTP being approved, and we can get that to RTC for the April committee. That's the plan.
Okay. Yeah, I understand why it was drafted the way it was. However, yeah, based on the 2 options up there, and in the interest of perhaps saving some budget for other PT things that we want to do, option B would be my preferred, possibly with the proviso of instead of the 90, which would be fully allocated, maybe extending that to 100K, allowing for other smaller bespoke events that might be more community minded, that might only need a small vehicle or smaller transport solution to make it more accessible, that they could maybe apply to that fund as well.
Yep. And to give you an idea, we do run smaller shuttles for some of the rugby events, and they only cost us about $200 to $300 to run for a very brief period to get people around. So that's, you know, probably useful to have for some of those smaller events.
Okay. Yeah, so if we could change that to 100, and then I'm happy to move option. Yeah.
So we've got a mover and Councillor Strange and a second and Councillor Dunbar Smith. We've got questions. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, how much does field days cost the council? Because that is an organisation that's been around for 50 odd years now. It charges $30 a person, $100,000 per person, $3 million in ticket sales, plus all the incredibly expensive site fees, millions of dollars every year. And I know they've invested into the site, but they are essentially a commercial organisation who needs to get off their butt and either included in the sale of the tickets or whatever. I appreciate the congestion and the service it provides, but I think they should be contributing and we shouldn't be providing it at no cost. So if there is a subsidy from field days, I'd like to hear about it. But I just want to know how much.
So
much do field days cost us?
So we don't subsidise field days as a matter of course. Last year or during the COVID year, they came to us to seek funding retrospectively, and at that point we had surplus funding available and we gave them $60,000, but we don't fund them as a matter of course.
So they provide that bus service their cost?
It is at their cost.
That's right, that's clarified. Sorry, can I? Sorry, Mike.
Is this, we've got Councillor Graff and then I'll come to you, Councillor.
Not just the question, I may be missing the point. There's only two options. Is there an option not to fund any of these events?
Yes, there was one put forward.
Oh, was it?
But it wasn't the recommended option.
Okay. No, I'm just looking at that, seeing that there's either option B or C, but
so we put forward that option A is not recommended, which was to not fund anything at all, including balloons over the Waikato and the rugby. Option B or C allowed you to fund, you know, the all of the options, and then option C was to make funding available for just the ones that we currently fund, so balloons.
Page 232 of the agenda.
We didn't, as staff, recommend option A because we funded balloons and the rugby continuously now. And we have a rolling kind of programme with those organisations, but it is there, it's on the table.
Councillor. Councillor Hughes.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'd like to disclose a conflict of interest or potential. I'm a life member of the Field Day Society, so I'm not going to be talking in favour of them, but I am aware that they will be putting a submission in for funding. So.
All right, any further comments or questions on this? If not, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. All right, so now item 10. Am I correct? Item 10, which is the public transport fares increase and changes to Community Connect concession. This is on page 234 of your agenda. Vincent.
Thank you, Chair and Council members. So with your permission, can I just take the report as read? And I'll run through a couple of slides, or is that okay? Or just to sum up from the report, at the council workshop last year, November last year, staff presented a paper on fare increase. I think we discussed the importance and the need to ensure fare levels are reviewed to meet the growing costs of public transport. The staff took the council through three different fare increase options: 10%, 20% and 50%. And I think at the end of the workshop, there's a general comfort for council to endorse 20% increase to fares for the next LTP, from the start of the next LTP. Since then, the government has announced the changes to funding for Community Connect. This means we'll no longer receive Community Connect funding from 30th of April this year. And this will have implication to our fee system. In order to continue the Community Connect concessions, this will require councils to find another $1.7 million per annum, which is not recommended by staff, as it is not financially sustainable without any subsidies from the government. To enable the transition of the Community Connect removal, sorry, can you move down to the slides? We've got two options. Next one down. The changes. Okay, so the next slides, yep. So staff have come up with two options, and effectively those options will be recommending council to increase fee by 20%. And for concession, we're suggesting revert back to what council had previously adopted. This means the community concession for use in child will be removed, but we will still retain the concession for community service car holder, as this will continue to be funded by the government. The key difference between two options are really around the fare capping. So for option one, which is what council previously adopted, so the weekly fare cap for adult will be 9 times of the standard B-car fare, and under 18 will be 7.5. And for option two, the adult will be the same, but under 18 will be lowering the cap rate to 6.5 times. So our staff recommendation is option two. And I think if you kind of move down the next slide. Yeah, so I think the report set out some broad rationales. But just something important to consider was option two is close to what council had previously adopted. And I guess Community Connect concession is more like a limited time gift, but shouldn't be seen as a norm, as it wasn't adopted by council in terms of the fare policies, nor it was budgeted for. So it's probably something for council to consider. With option two, there's another thing to consider was we are suggesting that we need to fund the Community Connect for another 2 months so that we can introduce the new fees and change the concession at the same time. Yep.
We're done.
Question.
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the report. And understand that this is this topic has made headlines with the 20%. However, in the years since we set these fares, they haven't increased at all. So in real terms, if it had kept up, it's probably more likely a 3% increase in real terms that we're looking at, and a 40-cent, if you go in real money terms, increase. I think where the previous government stepped in and provided a lot of financial incentives for PT was really useful post-COVID to get us back on track to pre-COVID patronage levels, which we really appreciated as a region and went a long way to getting us back there. As much as we don't like to increase cost with the adverse effect that might have on some people's ability to pay and use PT, we do need to be financially prudent as well. So yeah, I see the rationale by increasing PT fares, and I agree that option two with the youth fare capping to be at 6.5 is a fair way to go, seeing as youth, you know, that's a lot of our school kids within Hamilton, which if parents then have to drive kids to school, that increases congestion, et cetera, et cetera. So you really like that nuance there with the option 2. So yeah, happy to move option 2 in support of it. Thank you.
Question.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you. How often do we increase the fares? Where I'm going to go to is, do we index them every year with inflation? So that no doubt the costs of bill increases to the council from the bus companies that raises each year, no doubt, throughout the contract. And maybe fluctuations through diesel and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if there's exceptions. So do we hold the fares for years and years and then finally put them up, or are we looking at indexing them, or should we if we don't?
The model that we followed over the last 6 years has not been to increase them annually, but to hold them and then come, as we are doing here, come to you with an LTP discussion. We'd welcome the opportunity to have the ability to review them annually. We don't have a policy that supports that at the moment. So that is a potential action from this conversation, that we put in place the ability for us to reflect them based on not so much the operators' escalation rates, but the national escalation rates that are set by Waka Kotahi.
So I'm prepared to second this if that is built into the resolution, and ask the set mover to build that in. Is happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy. I did have that in mind to say as well, but I forgot. So thanks for raising that, Noel.
So shall we, are we adding that as a point C, point D, or is this another point, or is this another number?
It's an action, separate.
So somebody want to give me some words here?
And further, that council will, staff will bring forward to council a policy that allows the annual review and increase of fares.
They might go down as well. So an annual review of fares. Yes.
Due to annual review of fares. Is that sufficient direction?
Yeah, that allows for an annual increase in fare, to increase.
Well, annual review.
Yeah, but that just reviewing it doesn't mean to say, allows us to increase as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that's inferred, well, I'm happy with that.
Can I just check with staff, is that the case? I think the request was for an annual indexation against some cost of living increase or something, as opposed, can we just clarify, if you do a review, does that mean you've got to go through a process of committee then council approval?
I guess that depends what council signs off as the policy. You may delegate that to the organisation, or you may wish to put it through the Regional Transport Committee and up through council. That'd be your call. But we can draft the policy however you wish.
I want the simplest process, that council can just say, yeah, it's gone up, we need to move it. Whether we go up the whole lot or whether we just need to have an annual oversight, because if we wait 3 years or 6 years, it's too long.
Understand. So what we're asking for in this point is a policy to be brought forward to this council so that we can ensure a process along the lines of what you're suggesting.
Thank you.
Or are we actually suggesting that there's a process that at the annual plan time they can bring forward a review, so that each year at annual plan, otherwise this is just a review that the policy they've got to bring back to us again.
Okay, so does the wording need to change to reflect that? Just checking.
I'd like. Yeah, Janine, you might like to just check the wording as reflecting that.
Yeah, whether it needs to be more explicit in terms of that as part of council's annual plan processes moving forward, a review of fare levels will be undertaken.
So that's not a policy. So then the policy is established here that it's reviewed at the end as part of the annual plan, as opposed to a separate policy that's separate from that process.
Yeah, I want the fares reviewed annually and if appropriate, increased.
and I think through the annual plan process is completely appropriate. It'll put some structure around it and have it considered as part of the whole around service delivery and how those costs are recovered. So if we can embed it within that process, I'm not sure what else we would need from a policy perspective other than it's just our approach
ensuring that
we
it's part of
ensure
the
it.
annual plan process.
Yeah. But whether Phil has something particular in mind from a policy position or just getting to a place where we make sure that we're reviewing them annually.
Yeah.
That sounds fine. We will have to adjust the policy in the regional public transport plan, but we can manage that separately.
Okay, all right. Okay,
I
so
was seconding that then, Madam Chair.
right, so we've got a second in Councillor Smith. I'm coming to you, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, thanks, Madam Chair. Really just, I guess it's connected to that. Last November, I think it was, we were required to ask to approve a significant increase in driver salaries wages up to $28 an hour. And Mark at the time signalled that there was likely to be further increases. I assume that has happened. It didn't require our subsequent approval. At the time, I think we were receiving a subsidy from NZTA for that.
That's for bus driver wages.
Yeah. So there was
what we're discussing here is the fares, though.
Yeah. And sorry, so are we still getting that subsidy? If not, when is it due to end? Is anybody aware of that? Because I see that as being directly connected back to the fares. Yeah.
So that process was separate from the normal process,
Yes.
but I believe that has now been subsumed into the annual budgets as opposed to being separated as it was. There was a second step to that, as you say, and we've been party to those negotiations as they've been continuing, but I don't think they're at a point yet where we can come back to council, which is, as you say, the action on us. But we are still working on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have Councillor Nicol.
Thanks. Yes, understand the need for the fare increase and all of that. The question I have is paragraphs 31 and 32 talk about to enable the implementation of option 2, council would need to provide additional funding to allow the extension of the Community Connect, is that it? Until June, which would allow the changes to concession fare capping and fare levels to occur at the same time to avoid any confusion from the public. But then that would have to find the 300,000 with an existing budget. My question is, isn't the Community Connect thing a national thing that then has comms around it that's ending? And hence, we're actually then as the Waikato different for 3 months, which might also cause confusion. And so I'm just questioning whether spending that 300,000 is worthwhile. But if there are other reasons, please let me know.
Yeah, I guess from a comms perspective, I think we just want to manage this carefully because I think we are introducing new fares in July. Mm-hmm. So to avoid any confusion, I think our recommendation would be we should structure our comms around all the changes to fare at one go rather than trying to do the concession changes in April and then the fare increase in July.
The other point to note on this is that though you're right, there should be a whole national campaign around this.
Most people have not heard.
Respectfully, the last time the community concession came out, it was our comms team that had to put that comms out. So although the government did their big fanfare, it's actually through our comms lines that really gets landed with the public in the Waikato. So it isn't, it kind of is, but
it is.
Yeah.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder.
One quick one.
Mm-hmm.
I notice Auckland's have moved a composite fare, which covers and I know it's probably not relevant for the Waikato, but with these new strategies of people coming into a hub and then moving to another place and then moving on, has any consideration been given to a monthly fare which covers all services?
So at the moment, the train and the bus all use the B card. So all the services that we offer, barring the flex service, which you can do with your bank card, use the B card already. And we have a zone structure that takes you from Auckland into Hamilton Huntly down into Hamilton and between those zones as well. So we already have a fairly simplified version. But Vince, did you want to add?
Oh, no, I think in terms of weekly fare capping, it's quite similar to the monthly subscription anyway. So people spend the maximum amount of money weekly, and all the travel after the maximum amount will be free. So it's similar to the subscription model.
All right, we've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so last, we have one more for PT? Regional rating. So this is item, this is 11, item 11. This is page 243 on your agenda pack. Approach to regional public transport rating.
Okay, so this is a complicated paper. It's been before the council a couple of times, and we're trying to move it forward in increments, but this is the moment where we make a decision about the 3 options that we will consult on for the LTP. And really, before getting into questions, I really want to stress and highlight the benefit of this to both us as a regional council, but also to the people we serve through PT. At the moment, and I think in the last paper, you were given an example of the T-Kuiti connector, in which we had to get 7 different funders to all agree, get an MOU, agree their funding share, and then we have to invoice all of those 7 funders on a monthly basis for that service as it currently stands. It makes it very hard to introduce new services, even though the community might want them, because there is a whole heap of work that needs to be done to align all of those funders and get them over the line. It also raises the risk that if 2 funders drop out, which happens because our current funders for the T-Kuiti connector include Wintec and the University of Waikato, if they were to decide that they can't fund anymore, which happens, it then means you have to go round the merry-go-round again to see if everybody's available to fund that service. This approach takes us out of that loop. It should be administratively for us much more efficient. We will have a process then through the RPTP that allows local councils to talk to us about what they want. We will also then be able to plug that into the ratings models that we have here at council and tell those communities what it means in terms of a change to their ratings bill. Currently, it's still all being paid for by ratepayers. It's just currently sitting within your UAGC or a targeted rate within that council that we don't see, but we still collect that money. So there's no change to the amount of money that's being collected under this. It's just we're taking out the middleman. So on that, any questions?
Councillor Strange.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for simplifying that rather complex 3-year process into a couple of sentences. So basically what you're asking us to approve here is just what goes out for consultation. Yep. Do we have that up on the screen, Dave? Or
there should be a...
Do we not need a preferred option though?
There is a preferred option.
Yeah.
The preferred option is option 2, which is to move to the metro regionalised approach, which separates out the metro area specifically, and it allocates the cost through the metro, and it allocates the metro area services to the metro. Everything outside of the metro can be allocated either through looking at the entire route or by TLA. The reason for that is we have to reflect both the level of service, but also the wider benefit that comes from that. So when you think about this, it's worthwhile thinking about the fact that we get a significant amount of people that commute in from the periphery of Hamilton, from Cambridge and TA. Some of those people benefit from the fact that Hamilton is less congested as a result of the PT services that operate in that area. So we're trying to bring that in line, but we also want to acknowledge that if you live in Haraki or if you live in TCDC, your level of service is not a Hamilton level of service. And therefore, you shouldn't be paying the same amount. You should be paying towards the level of service that you get. So that's how this is structured. And the Metro is given this special kind of area, and that boundary is to be determined over the next year and will be carefully stepped through with those TLAs, because it will make quite a big difference which side of the boundary you're on in that metro area. But that's why year 2 implementation is our preferred as well, because we also don't know what's going to happen with funding as per yesterday government GPS, but also because we really need to step through where these boundaries are in our preferred option 2, so that people are really comfortable with, it's fair that that person's paying towards the metro and these people are not paying towards the metro. That will affect Waipart and Waikato and Matamata in particular. Outside of those areas, you'll be paying by your TLA.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for that. Yeah, I'm in support of going out for consultation with those preferred options as you've got up there. So happy to move.
So with option 2, so consulting on option 2.
No, all of them.
All of them, but with
All of
option
them.
2
Both the
preferred.
preferred option.
Okay.
I'm happy to second, Madam Chair.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
2 things. Page 251 sets out very clearly the difference. For example, if you're Karakia TCDC, you're paying 34 cents. If you're in the metro, you're paying $26. So it gives an idea of what's there. It might be useful to include that in the consultation process so that people get an idea of what they're speaking about. Otherwise, it's just words. And also, do we indicate when we're consulting what the preferred option is? Because otherwise it's terribly confusing even for councillors.
The plan is to say our preferred option is this and this is why. So the comms team and I and the ratings team will work on how we really dig that out, because you're right, it is quite complicated. We're not going to do that in one page in the LTP. So I believe that Wendy and I will be talking about something that is a deeper kind of dive into that, so that people can really understand the concepts that are being put forward in here. It isn't simple.
Well, I suspect that table 2 gives people an idea, because
it helps
on it, so people will look at that. Yeah.
And the attachment 1 that was in there talks about some of those nuances between the options. So where we currently rate is probably the area where we need to be really mindful about any change between the options. The reason why option 2 ended up being preferred was because where we currently rate, it more closely mirrors what we're currently doing. Option 1 really concentrates. So in places like Matamata, where we currently rate pretty much on the lines of a district, right, with some concentration, it concentrates it all next to the corridor. So if you're lucky enough, or depending on how big your rate's bill is, unfortunate enough to be next to a bus stop, under option 1, you would pay a lot of money, even though, you know, you're not necessarily catching the bus. So it's really more of a concentration. It doesn't reflect the wider community benefit that PT brings to those districts.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. It's no surprise that I don't support the options there. Currently, as it says in this document, Waikato District, the constituency that I represent, do it through general rate, and it applies to all properties within the area. And if we use some of the rationale that's been put before us at times, if we all support public transport, then those of us who have to drive to get somewhere to get on a bus or go to a urban centre should have less traffic on the road to get to where we want to go. So I don't support those options. I support looking at a region-wide rate across all, because that supports, if you accept the arguments put forward by those in this space, turning the arguments back on themselves, the reality is why should we drive? And who says 5 kilometres is the right distance? Because most of us in the Waikato district, if we're not in a town, we have to drive to somewhere. And for a lot of places, those settlements are not far off the main divide. To go drive to a bus stop to get on a bus that doesn't come when you want it to come, it's frustrating. So anyway, I'm going round a little bit, and I will record my vote against this. Yeah. Yeah.
Councillor
And I
Marr?
support
Oh, sorry.
hydrogen. So there you go.
Councillor Marr, just a left field, just lob it in there. Councillor Marr.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Smith, for orbiting the subject. I support going out with the 3 options, and with the assurance that it will give areas like my TCDC the opportunity to look at trialling more services along those lines, which is in the report. So thank you.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder. Sorry, yes? Sure.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, that 5K one, could argue all day till you get that right, hey? I think we just got to go with it, eh? At 4 or 6, I really don't know, but we've got to start somewhere. So.
Well, and I suppose that where that 5K gets implemented is what you're referring to, the need to do this in year 2.
Yeah.
Because it allows us some time to really refine.
So, I mean,
where
the
those
5K approach is based on what's a reasonable amount of time that somebody would get in their car or jump on a scooter or do whatever to get to a PT stop. Now, there will be places in the region where people will drive longer and they might do those things. But in reality, we kind of know in transport planning land that if you're doing 10 minutes in the car, more than 10 minutes in a car, and then you've got to get out of the car, wait for 5 minutes, get on a bus, it gets smaller and smaller, the number of people that would be willing to do that.
All right.
So that's why.
Great. We've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Carried. All right. Next, we have the Revenue and Financing Policy Review. This is item 11. Oh, sorry, am I right? Item 12. The last one was 11A. Item 12, this is on page 259 of your agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this report presents the revised revenue and financing policy. Obviously, this is the policy that guides how council funds the activities that it undertakes. However, within the report, there are a couple of decisions that are required in relation to the funding of our permitted activity monitoring work, as well as our work in the primary industry engagement space. Alongside that, we have highlighted the revised schedule of fees and charges that will be part of our consultation process as well, reflecting effectively the new spend within budgets and how that gets translated into those fees. So, Dave, if perhaps we just want to work through onto the next slide. So this is around the permitted activity monitoring rating. So recommendation that rate, which is currently applied to properties greater than 2 hectares, actually the basis of application moves to those properties 20 hectares and greater. And that also a 20% general rate contribution is applied to that program of work. At the moment, that's fully funded through the permitted activity targeted rate.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I've expressed my displeasure at this. During a event earlier last year, we heard from Patrick Lynch that, well, Robbie and I, and I'm not sure whether Chris, you were there, that we heard that the problematic child is the 400 of the 4,000 dairy farms, and that this current $75 rate at the moment is generally all directed towards those 400 problematic dairy farms. So the likes of the horticulture, the sheep and beef, and all that are being dragged into this at a higher cost, just to target those particular problem children. So I'm not saying that there aren't landowners in the other categories that don't do things wrong, but if you've got a particular problem, target the particular problem rather than doing a general sweep. Absolutely enjoy the benefit personally, so I'll declare that I'm a farmer, landowner, and that one should pay a permitted activity rate. However, I'm just don't accept the rationale that because you're 20 hectares, and most dairy properties are to be economic, but to throw every other land use in there, I don't think it's equitable. Thank you.
So this is moving from 2 hectares, which includes everybody that's over 2 hectares, but regardless of their activity.
20 hectares.
Well, the 2 is current.
Yep.
It's moving to 20.
Can we have some clarification on
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
the challenges we've got here? Because I think
Yes.
Ben could
I
explain.
just need to, okay, I've got, speaking order, I've got Councillor Kneebone and Councillor Downard. So if I can get you to, there you go. Let's get a mic for Brent. There we go.
Yeah, so councillors, the current situation is it's charged for everybody over 2 hectares. And for the very reason that you've identified, councillor, work isn't occurring on properties over in that 2 hectare to 20 hectare space today. Where we do go out to in those spaces, generally remember this is the proactive monitoring space. We go out to properties between 2 and 20 hectares where we are reacting to issues, which is our incident response area. So we still address issues on those properties, but it's the proactive monitoring. So that's the work to date. Now, you'll all know that the National Environmental Standard has put in place rules that we need to implement that are permitted activity rules, which are properties above 20 hectares. Plan Change 1 has rules that are becoming operative from hopefully the middle of next year when the plan gets approved for properties above 20 hectares. So the permitted activity regulatory framework, both nationally and regionally, is focused on properties above 20 hectares. So to me, it seems not logical that this council is charging properties between 2 and 20 hectares, but logical to charge properties above 20 hectares. Coming back to what you said, Councillor Smith, about the feedback that Patrick provided, yeah, the majority of the places that we are going back to have to resolve serious non-compliance are some of those bigger farms. And remember, I came to the council saying how we'd look to address that is through the new mechanisms under the Natural Built Environment Act, where we could charge those people directly. The Natural Built Environment Act removed that opportunity. So whilst I totally agree with you, Noel, that I'd like to go direct, that mechanism was taken away. So whilst this is not perfect, it is better than status quo because it's focusing the funding on the properties that national and regional regulation has as its threshold for permitted activity work, which then drives our proactive monitoring, not the reactive. We need to proactively monitor compliance with national and local regulation. Hopefully that helps.
So I just want to get you a mic back. You've got,
Yeah,
okay,
I've got one,
go
thank
ahead
you.
and
So,
got it.
so we did talk about a reduced rate between 2 and 20 because you do respond to that, and unless we have something in that space, then
So
the over 20s will pay for it.
Yes, we did, but we said there's a very small proportion of activity reactively in that space. We don't proactively monitor in that space.
So are you going to capture that?
And so what I was saying is that it's not fair to rate those 14,000 properties between 2 and 20 hectares because there might be reactive monitoring in their space. We do reactive monitoring at any size land, and that's covered by our incident response team, which is funded by the general rate, because it could be any size property that we go and visit in a reactive space.
So has that alleviated your concerns, Councillor Smith?
And I guess in this space, there's also the proposal to shift some of the funding to the general rate anyway. So by default, those properties will be making a contribution. Yeah.
Councillor Kneebone.
Yeah, so that general rate one's a bit that's grinding at me a little bit. Particularly given its primary engagement activities. I guess I want to know, Brent, how are we going to sell that to everyone in Hamilton City?
So are we talking right now in terms of the proactive monitoring or the primary industry engagement piece of work?
Primary industry engagement activities. Yeah, I know, but just as you finished tailed off then, Janine, you mentioned the other one, because look, I've never, as you well know, I've never liked the PA stuff, but we're stuck from a rock and a hard place, and I think you've landed in as best of places we're going to get on that one for the time being. And I'm also conscious that with the new coalition's proposed changes to the freshwater stuff, we may lose our ability to directly recover costs as well, which is really pisses me off, to put it bluntly, as well. But anyway, so yeah, but I think this prime minister engagement stuff, I think we're gonna. I'm not sure how we can just sell that to Hamilton City hand on heart, you know.
So if I take a bit of a stab at that, and again, this is just where I've landed, and I recognise it's up for the council to decide how they wish to distribute those costs. Currently, all of those costs are borne by the general rate. My view is that some of those costs should shift to where that work is occurring, and which is why I presented two options. One, to go with the strict compliance model, which this council has a policy of 80-20 in the compliance space, which would shift more onto the targeted rate and less into the general rate. I mentioned before that personally, I see that there is, I look at the purpose of PC1 was about getting people onto the journey into that farm planning space, and that maybe there's opportunity to transition in that direction, as opposed to going straight into an 80-20 into the compliance model space, which is what's applied to consent compliance monitoring and permitted activity compliance monitoring. I accept that the councillors may wish to go 80-20, and I'll deliver whatever you want me to deliver. But my recommendation was to start at the 50-50, and you might want to move it over time. But if you were to go straight to 80-20, the data in there shows you what the financial impacts would be on the targeted rate. I guess at the same time, I was conscious that you would be looking at this from a collective view about the impact on targeted ratepayers, and that you might want to see options about how you might like to do that. I totally accept that it's not a science, that it's a judgment, and that I'm just giving you advice about how I would transition it, but I will live with whatever, I will implement whatever comes out of the room.
Yeah, no, look, I think you've answered that well, Brent, and I think I probably would have landed where you've landed too. I suppose I just want to remind everyone that the forest sector now, they can be direct charged for their PA rules. So if we go out to monitor activity, we send them a bill for anywhere between $500 and $20,000, depending how big the activity is. When they see this, they're going to go absolutely bonkers, and quite rightly so. But hey, there's only about a dozen of them, so they tend to have limited effect. But the point still is, just to remind everyone that the ag sector's had a pretty free ride up until now, and you talk to industries like the mining industry that are all on consents, and they get so pissed off because they work so hard to comply, and yeah, anyway, look, I guess we give it a go, but I reckon there'll be a bit of backlash.
Councillor Nicol.
Thanks.
Excuse
me.
Oh, sorry.
Chairman.
Councillor Downard, then Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, we had a robust workshop on this and I remember giving Brent some Macintoshes to keep his energy levels up. So I'd like to move this because it went through a lot of discussion. I think it was about an hour's worth of discussion and I think it's a great case. So I'd like to move it, please.
Councillor Nicol.
Yeah, it was a good workshop, but my recollection from the workshop was that there was quite a lot of support for the 80-20 rule, and so I was just going to see whether anyone else. I think Councillor Hughes, you and I were quite aligned on that, but if not, then that's fine. But I'm happy to raise an amendment to test it. But otherwise, if there's no support, then I won't bother. But yeah, to me, it just seems like a fair place, whether it be to be with other industries or just in general, just the perception of this is a primary industry engagement or to phase into it. But yeah, keen to hear what others think. I just remember a different outcome from a larger majority quite wanting the 80-20. Yeah.
Councillor Cookson.
Yeah, I think we had a good, robust discussion about a month ago about this. I think maybe 6 weeks now, I suppose, since Christmas has been. It's disappointing that I want to say non-compliant isn't maybe not a good word, but users that definitely, yeah, we can't do something about that. It's in a much more productive and put that cost back towards them for that monitoring or making sure that they're applying, staying within the rules, I suppose is a better word. It's just sad that can't happen because you know you could always be you haven't got all the you haven't ticked the box, but you're actually doing a perfectly good job as well. You know, like so there's a two-sided, but there's also the guys that do nothing and are still getting away with misbehaving all the time, and we can't do a lot about it. So
I should say that whilst the MBEA has gone, my personal understanding, and I guess no ministers are holding to my personal understanding, it's quite supported, and so it may well come back in future, but it's just out, and whilst the MBEA is out and they do a revision of the RMA.
So let's just get on with it. Vote for it.
Just checking, did we have a mover? Did we have a seconder for this? Okay, so we've got Councillor Mara as a second. We've got Councillor Strange online.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Just.
Yep.
Can we bump up the volume?
Yep. Is it better?
Good.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I'm just reflecting on what Councillor Kneebone and Councillor Nicol have said. I'm just wondering if yeah, there was testing of yeah, the 80-20. Yeah, I'd be supportive in a test for the 80-20 principle that Councillor Nicol was talking about. That's all. Thanks.
Is there any, I'm just looking around the room. Pardon me? Well, I'm looking around.
Okay, so move an amendment, same resolution, just changing 80-20 for general rate being 20% and 80 to the target rate. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll second it.
All right.
And one of the key things I'd like to point out, mate, Robbie, is that the more you sheet home the true cost to the cockies, the more likely they're going to lean on their neighbours that aren't doing what they should be doing, those 400 people, but hey. Yeah.
What are we changing?
Anyway, let's test it and get on with it. Keep moving.
So I think, Madam Chair, the suggestion is that item 5, is it, that the 50% be changed to
80/20.
Wait a minute, item 5 is just the species. It's item
Yeah, I'm only speaking to one of them.
3. Item
That the
3.
primary industry engagement, that's all. And yeah, I totally acknowledge, I'm just trying to be consistent across council and also acknowledging there might be some input from the general rate, but I just feel like that's a fair input representing the people of Hamilton. As an example, who aren't going to see these primary industry engagement people at all.
All right. So we've got, we got this, have I, to the mover and the seconder of the amendment, have we got this right on the screen?
Yep,
But you've got that as number 1. This is an alternate to item 3. Everything else in it.
Just what's the rating impact for the general rate on the difference? So
That's set out in the report.
yeah,
In sections 31, there's a 50-50 funding split. So that would be rates increase of approximately $99, including GST for properties that are 20 hectares or greater, and a decrease in the general rate of $886. That's at the 50-50. The 80-20 is properties 20 hectares or greater, $150, including GST per annum, and a reduction in the general rate of 1.4 million. So it's about a $500,000 difference on the general rate between those two options.
so the general rate's funding $500,000 more for the
At a 50-50 split.
Yeah, so I'm just proposing to reduce the general rate.
Sorry.
So yes, so in both scenarios, targeted rate goes up, general rate goes down. The question is just how much the general rate goes down by. And just so there's absolute clarity, as you'll see in the report, there are 2 significant work programs in PI. One of them is the one that's specifically around properties above 20 hectares, and that's the one that we're talking about here, not the entirety of that business. It's the part of the business which is around those properties 20 hectares above, which would then fairly be rated to properties 20 hectares and above. Does that make sense? So our primary industry engagement section has broader responsibilities than just farm planning. You know that there's some work around, there's a whole bunch of other things that they do. This is about the work that they do in that farm planning space for properties above 20 hectares, not every single element of their work program. So just if that's clear in the report, I just want to make sure that you're all clear as well.
$500,000 sounds like a chunky amount, but just an idea on per property.
So Janine answered that question a second ago, which was on the
per property for the general rate.
Oh, what does $500,000 mean?
Not very much.
Yeah, so
every little bit helps.
Answer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So we'll just stick.
All right. So we have.
One
Yes,
last thing.
Councillor Dunbar.
Item number 35 is their alternative you recommended, that you start with 50-50 and increase over time to 80-20 within 3 years. That's a third option that you guys have promoted in your document.
So absolutely, what I heard at the last council meeting was support, but you weren't sure at what level of support. And so I presented the 50 and the 80, which were the 2 ends of the spectrum that I heard the councils talk about. And then I gave you another option of you might want to transition. And now it's option time. Yeah.
All right, so we have an amendment.
I'm going to say, Ben, if you wanted to raise that option, you're welcome to make an amendment to say exactly that and see how it lands. And we can test the phase. And I think it might have a lot of support actually. Or I can just change my amendment to that. But I'd like to test it.
Sorry, Dave? You're not going to get a.
I'm going to try and stop you getting tangled up here with resolving something and then road blocking yourself from the next thing.
I'll just change.
I would recommend that you look at your amendment you could foreshadow councillor Dunbar Smith's suggestion. So if that amendment was to fail, you can then move on to the next one. And then if that one fails, you can revert back to the original motion as it stands.
Or I
But,
can, or I
okay,
can
just to
I can just
query.
change mine.
So, I don't see the 80% showing up there.
It's the 20 is
Well, I
what,
realise, but we're going to 80-20, all,
that's because if we look at 3 in the original one,
yes,
it's talking about the percentage coming from the general rate.
right.
So the amendment is changing the percentage coming from the general rate to 20.
Okay, so we don't need to clarify where the other percentage is coming from?
By default.
Yeah.
I can help here a little bit too. What we're doing is we've got an amendment to item number 3 of the original motion. Once you've dealt with that, if that is successful, we'll come to a substantive motion where we'll bolt it all back together. So the substantive motion would then, for example, become that motion with a revised number 3, where it all packages together with the overall view. So at this stage, all you're really doing is looking to amend that one part of the whole motion. Did that help?
And look, I'm happy to change the motion because I like Ben's suggestion and I didn't remember that. So just get rid of that foreshadowed perhaps and change the nickel knee-bone one to say phased over 3 years to 80-20. That's what I'm asking. Stu, you happy with that?
Do you make that change?
Yeah, okay.
I'll phase it in.
But also note there's 10,000 properties that'll pay $264 more, right? Just at the current state with the option we're looking at. So they're already going to pay 264 extra.
No, the option that I've recommended would have 13,800 properties paying $73 less and 10,800 properties paying $213.
264.
No, $213 more. That's the 50-50 split option. And if you went for the 80-20, instead of paying 213 more, they would pay 264 more.
Right,
So that's an additional $50 on that targeted rate if you moved immediately to the 80-20. But obviously those 13,500 properties below 20 hectares will get their $73 reduction.
Advising farmers or landowners to ensure they do something to make sure they get their $260 worth.
If it helps by way of comparison, if you have a resource consent to farm, your costs are, for those of you that have a resource consent to farm, markedly higher than those numbers. This is a resource consent that's been given to you by way of the plan.
I do want to make some progress here.
No, I'd really appreciate support for the amendment piece, just so that we are starting where the staff recommended. We are moving to the 80-20 over the course of 3 years, because that is the fair place to land for this industry to stand alongside other industries, and a fair way to spread things across our region, just like we just talked about with the public transport rating thing. It just makes sense. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to put that. All those in favor of the amendment? Can I get hands up so I can get a gauge here? 1, 2, 3. Just throw it into the mix, eh? So I'm sorry, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just checking if there's hands up online. 6. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And Cutter just walked out the door. Oh, feel free to.
Oh, well, we haven't done that either, have we?
I don't think we have a status quo.
Because
It
that's
isn't
a
currently
proposed change.
Both of them are changes. See if you want to decrease the rate over time.
Okay,
I
we're
just
gonna,
remind everyone of the comment Brent just made that those farmers that have to get resource consents are paying significantly more, which makes it even more unjustifiable to lump this onto the bloody urban population. The urban population ain't helping the guys with consents in any way, shape or form. Well, 20%. But
all right. I just want to make sure, we're going to do a division on this because we now have people that are not in the room. And I want to make sure that this gets recorded. So this is a division on the amendment.
Okie dokie. What I'm going to do is I'm going to run through the names. Can you please indicate, make sure your mics are on, whether you support, oppose or abstain, and we'll see where we end up. So the amendment is that we adjust item number 3 to be a 50% funding contribution decreasing to 20% over 3 years from the general rate. And we'll start with Councillor Strange.
Support.
Councillor Dunbar-Smith.
Support.
Councillor Hughes.
Support.
Councillor Graff. Councillor Nicol.
Support.
Councillor Downard.
Oppose.
Councillor Smith. Councillor Cookson.
Oppose.
Councillor Kneebone.
support.
Councillor Ma.
Oppose.
Councillor Clarkson. Support. Councillor Story.
I support.
It's at 7-5. The amendment has been carried.
So now we do the substantive.
Madam Chair, just while getting that up, Councillor Ma did note that it didn't indicate where the remainder of that would come from. In the resolutions in the paper in the book, it was missing a resolution 2, which is actually on screen, which indicated it was from the targeted rate.
That's in part 2, where it says the targeted rate is recovered from those properties. Or is that, well, is that clear enough for everybody? Sorry, we're clear? Okay. All right. So do I need another mover and seconder for a substantive? All right, do I have a mover for the substantive? So a mover and Councillor Kneebone, a second and Councillor Nicol. Yep.
Okie dokie, we've got a substantive motion on the floor. We have a mover and seconder based on the amendment that we have just carried. Again, I'll call out your names. Can you please indicate whether you support, oppose or abstain? Councillor Strange?
The whole thing.
Sorry. Can't quite see the screen. Can I go last? Sorry, while I read it.
Yep. Councillor Dunbar-Smith? Support. Councillor Hughes?
Support.
Councillor Graff? Councillor Nicol?
Support.
Councillor Downard?
Support.
Councillor Smith? Councillor Cookson?
Oppose.
Councillor Kneebone?
Support.
Councillor Mahuta? Oh, not online, sorry. Councillor Ma? Councillor Clarkson? Support. Councillor Story,
Support.
Councillor Strange,
Support.
and 10-2, the motion is carried.
No, you all agreed yesterday that we were seeing this through.
I didn't. I wasn't here. And I won't be.
I really hope we can get finished because people are dropping like flies despite their commitment yesterday.
Honestly, Madam Chair, it's been a long day and I'm
I
pretty
absolutely
fried now.
agree.
So
I
I'm
absolutely
looking
agree.
at
It's been
4
a long
o'clock.
day. Yeah.
So if we've lost so many people, is it fair to?
We haven't lost so many people, but we have lost some people. When I tested the appetite was to continue on and see this through today. Yeah, we have sufficient.
Well,
Yeah.
I would suggest that in terms of the actual discussion on the rating impact, we need to do that tomorrow. I can see us going through the revision of financing policy and those sorts of admin things, but I think we're too fried to kind of go through the rest.
And I'd like to be here. And my theory is that I want to be fresh. I travel 2 hours back and forth. I know I could stay up here in a motel, but I'm not going to sit 14, 16 hours in a motel twiddling my thumbs, cuddled up to a long-term plan when I can cuddle up to my wife.
I can't think of anything worse. Maybe Brent will give you that apple back that you loaned him. Okay. All right, now I got grief yesterday calling this. So I just want to see where we're at.
So, Madam Chair, if we've covered off the resolutions in terms of the revenue and financing policy, then there is one more, I guess, administrative matter, which is around the rates, remission and postponement policies. The report, I think, quite clearly sets out where those changes are proposed. I'm very happy to take that as read, deal with any questions that councillors may have, or whether it's approved as a basis for consultation. So, Madam Chair, there are a number of things. So I guess outside of these policy matters, what was suggested yesterday when we were wrapping the meeting was that we would deal with the groups of activities information by exception. I have been through that section this afternoon and pulled out just the topics that I think need to be highlighted for council. They're set out in the report, but we can either do that this afternoon or we can do that tomorrow morning just to confirm those matters. They're just in a different presentation. This is the last of, I guess, the policy documents that are required to be approved by council.
Okay, hands up, who wants to continue on? Four people want to continue on.
I just hope we're not meeting on Monday, that's all.
Oh, no, I don't foresee us meeting on Monday, but I was hoping to give everybody back there Friday. But I don't believe we're going to get to that. Yeah. All right.
Crisis on this side of the room.
Okay.
So are we going to do?
Can I
this one?
Sorry, just hang on a second. So you think we can get through this rates remission one?
I believe that all of the changes that are included in these policies have been discussed with council. There shouldn't be anything new in here. They've just been written up in terms of as a policy statement. The report quite clearly sets out the changes and the reasons for it. So take it as read.
I'm looking, I noticed is that a don't continue or yes? Okay. Thanks. All right, so we will power through this and then when we come back, and then when we come back in the morning, nice and fresh. That's when we go through the GOAs and the final wrap it up.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, all of that, but it will be 9:30. It'll be 9:30. Absolutely sure. Okay, let's go ahead and knock this one off. So this is which item is this?
Lucky number 13.
Item 13, page 328.
In terms of the policies
Wait a minute, have I
themselves.
got that right?
So as a set out.
324.
Yeah, as is set out up there, some changes to existing policies around the remission and postponement of rates on Māori freehold land, noting changes in legislation that we just need to give effect to, some simplification of the remission of penalties policy. There's a new policy that is required around the remission of the Waikato Waipa watershed catchment contributor rate for forestry properties. That is just administrative to enable us to maintain the current treatment of those properties. There are some new policies there for consideration, one around natural disasters rates remission, which enables us, I guess, under the circumstance where properties are uninhabitable, is determined under the relevant legislation that we can provide some rates relief for those property owners and a remission of rates for Māori freehold land under development. Again, that was a new provision that was added into the Local Government Rating Act last year. The policies are all there, written up. We are required to consult on our rates remission and postponement policies at least every 6 years. So these would form part of our consultation process.
All right, are there any questions for Janine? Do we have a recommendation on the screen? There we go.
Happy to move.
We've got a mover in Councillor Nicol and a second in Councillor Downard. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. We will adjourn the meeting and come back tomorrow nice and fresh at 9:30. All right. So we'll close with the Karakia.
I'll just have to note that we had a bit of a sweepstake about how long this would take, this meeting, and I think Janine and I have lost now because we thought it might finish in 3 days. Unahia mai te uru tapanui, kia wātea kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te hinanaro, e te ara takatu, kua rā e rongo, e whakaria aki ki runga, kia tina, haumie, huie, tai kie.
All right, we'll adjourn the meeting at 3:45 p.m.